So I've been thinking a bit about how I see myself compared to how I exist. Um, Actually, a few days ago, Venerable Jigme gave a BBC that dealt with that in the sense of identities, but I'm thinking of more in the way of being the result of causes and conditions and being the aggregates being impermanent phenomena and being impersonal phenomena. So we, sentient beings, are all the result of causes and conditions, which is we're the result of our past actions of body, speech, and mind. And who I am right now is the result of the past, and those are part of a vast array of causes and conditions. And who I am right now and what I do with my body, speech, and mind is creating the causes and conditions for who I will be in the future and my future experiences. Do we see ourselves this way? Venerable has asked during the engaging the Bodhisattva deeds class. She asked us that one day. Do you see yourself as having existed? Do you think I exist now because the causes and conditions for me existed? And also, do we think about what I'm doing now as creating who I will be in the future? And I'm going to say a lot of times I don't think that way, I don't. And I'm trying to bring this to my own activities, mundane activities in my life, and how things I do might be just not really based on that awareness. I think about years ago, I used to drink, probably from my 20s till I was about 40 or so. And I hung around with a lot of people that were a lot older than me, a lot of people that were pretty much about 15, 16 years older than me, though some of the people I knew in the community I was in were a lot older than that. And I saw people in the bars or at parties and stuff that would drink that were having physical ailments. And at one point, the thought came up to me for me is, how can I think that I can do what they're doing and not have that happen to me? Because, and the answer, I didn't really answer that question then except by stop drinking. Especially I saw one person who was an older woman that I would see in the bars sometimes, and I would have guessed her maybe 63, probably more 65 to 70, and I was in my late 30s, and I found out she was 53, and that had an impact on me. And this question came back up, and I said to myself that question again: why do I think I can do this and not have that result? Well, why? Because I think of myself as some inherently existent being that's outside of causes and effects. But really, it's impersonal phenomena. And this body is an impersonal, impermanent phenomena. And when it interacts on an almost daily basis with the phenomena we call alcohol, illnesses arise. That's how that happens. Another way I was thinking about this is there's a lot of cancer in our society, a lot. I mean, there's probably nobody in this room who doesn't know somebody who's gotten cancer. Actually, I know there's not, because people come here that have survived cancer. And yet our society has this rampant cancer going on, really. Both my parents got cancer. And yet there are a lot of carcinogens that we're exposed to. Do we take that serious? It's in what they spray on the food, what gets put in the food, additives. There's carcinogens in healthcare, toiletry products. Do we really think about these things? Or is it just, oh, that won't happen to me? I'm going with this thought to try and poke at how am I viewing myself? How am I seeing myself that's not realistic? Um, and you can look at that in your own life. Maybe there's certain things that you might do that you're not expecting the obvious result because you don't see yourself as an impermanent, impersonal phenomena. But back to how our body, speech, and mind affect what we will experience in the future and who we will become. The afflictions arise due to causes and conditions. They abide and they cease also due to causes and conditions that are there. And we're working on trying to remove these afflictions. So when you look at attachment, if I keep chasing after desires, even mentally, I keep thinking of the object that I'm attached to as a beautiful thing, a pleasant thing, I'm feeding that, and that's going to grow. And if I counter it with antidotes, maybe the first antidote is that I think about the disadvantages of attachment, but that's not really enough. I have to look at that object and see how I'm exaggerating it. Otherwise, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be attached to that beautiful, attractive thing, and I'm not ever going to get over attachment that way, ever. And in the text that Venerable Seppel is leading us through on Thursdays, Rinpoche had said in the thing, cutting attachment or cutting desire? He says this, if you continue to think of, he uses an example of being attached to a person. If you continue to think of that person's body as attractive and their good qualities and you're not going to get over attachment. You can't. You can't counter attachment with that mindset. You have to see the disadvantages. And to see that, we have to look at how we're exaggerating that. So we have to see, how something is impermanent, how the body is foul, things are in the nature of dukkha and they're empty. And if we don't counter things, we will feed them. If we don't counter the afflictions, if we're just like, oh, that's not even in my purview, they will grow. And it's the same with anger. If we think of the negative qualities of something that we're angry at, why we're averse to it, that's going to grow. Many of the elders here have said they had problems being angry at somebody and went to Venerable, and she didn't want to hear about it. She's like, what's going on with your mind? And I remember that when I'm angry, not to go about talking about why I'm angry, because then I'm just feeding and reinforcing my exaggerations, It's not like this is what happened and then I tell all my blurry side of the story. But if we counter anger, and every time we counter it, we're turning our minds in this other direction. And there was a video I watched, I think it might have been the video on Vipassana in India. There was this warden in the largest prison in India, and she was talking about not discarding people into prisons and having this view that they're worthless. And she said, who has never been so attached to something or attracted to something that they were tempted to just take it, but refrained because of, it could be personal integrity, consideration for others. She doesn't go into why. She just says it, but refrained. And who has never been angry with somebody where they felt wronged or something and wanted to retaliate, but refrained? She said that's the thin line between these people that are in prison and us. But with this view of, oh, I'm this inherently existent person outside of causes and conditions, the thought will come up, oh, I would never do the things they did, though. I will refrain. Well, if I feed my attachment, I keep feeding it, I'm going to go there. If I feed anger, keep thinking about, and with no restraint on it, it will lead there, because that's the mind too is impersonal, impermanent phenomena. And if you give it certain causes and conditions, it will go there. And you could, if I just let my anger protects me. I had a friend say that once when they were having a lot of anger. My anger protects me. If you keep feeding and feeding your anger, you will go into some really dark states. And one thing about karma is we create the causes to do that again in the future. And it can spiral. And it's not like there's some inherently existent person that just won't cross that line. The mind, when fed these things, will go there. And it's an impersonal phenomena. And we are very fortunate. We have all these teachings on how to apply these antidotes and counter the afflictions, and the knowledge that that's what we want to do and the understanding of that. But we have a lot of teachings on how to develop love, because if you develop love, it will continue to grow. You might still have negative thoughts come up or anger and stuff for a long time, but don't doubt that the practice of cultivating those good qualities such as love and compassion are going to bear fruits. You're creating the causes and conditions. Another thing Venerable says a lot, be content to create the causes and conditions. And this goes also for things like how we see things, our worldview, seeing ourselves as impermanent, seeing ourselves as empty, and impersonal phenomena. So basically, this is what I wanted to talk about, is that our actions matter, and they create the experience that we will have in the future. And every time we recognize and counter an affliction, we are moving in that direction we want to go. And every time we have that come up and we fail to counter it and indulge in the affliction, we're moving the other way. So, basically, this is how I've been looking at the aggregates as being impermanent phenomena and impersonal phenomena.